Hey out there, Slotcar Land. How's everybody doing this fine, probably Monday morning as it is? I'm sorry this video is coming to you a little late. We had a very busy weekend this weekend. Shaden had his first football game on Saturday, which they lost. So they lost 12 to nothing. So they're needs to do some more work, but I think they'll get there. And then we had to buy groceries, and then me and the boys went to the races Saturday night. And then, of course, Sunday was opening football, NFL, and we had church. So I just kind of put this off until Sunday evening, and I'm going to edit it tomorrow, which is Monday, which is probably when this is going to be uploaded for you guys to watch and everything. So just a busy weekend on all in all. So I just kind of put this off for a little bit so I can enjoy the weekend. Enjoy being with my family and seeing my son's first football game of the season and just everything else. So, but today we're going to talk about oiling and where to oil and how to oil your slot cars. So I've picked 9 chassis, which I think are the most common chassis, and a couple of these will carry over to other chassis, and I'll mention that when we get to that particular chassis. Of how to oil your cars and everything. So, the first off, let's talk about oil. Use a oil that was deliberately made for slot cars. Do not use 3-in-1 oil. Do not use I know some other people have some other stuff that they swear by and all that kind of stuff. I prefer to use an oil that was specifically made for slot cars. The one that I use, or that I'm using right now, is from BSRT. I got this from HOSlotCarRacing.com. They have it listed there. They have a couple of different oils listed there. This is the one I chose to purchase. It's been very good. I haven't had any issues with it. It's very works very well with the cars that I use it on. So I'll probably be sticking to this as things go along. So, but make sure you're using one. If you want to, shop around and try several different ones until you find one that actually works, go for it. But do not use anything outside of something that's not designed for slot cars. Don't use 3-in-1 oil. That stuff is very made for multiple applications. It'll pick up, that stuff picks up dust really, really bad, and it's just not something you really want to use on your slot cars. So get an oil that was specifically designed to be used for slot cars and use it. There's varying brands, varying different types of oils out there, so just kind of shop around, hit some of the websites, talk to some of your friends, find out what they use. If you're just getting into the hobby and you're at a race, kind of look around, see what they're using, talk, get some ideas, ask some questions and whatnot. So to just get a general idea of what you guys use. So I've also used some of the old AFX stuff. Some of this stuff is still available. This X2c oil from AFX. You can still pick this up at some places that still have this. This does work really, really well. It was specifically designed for slot cars. If you can get a hold of some of this stuff works really, really well too. But I'm using the BSRT. I've been using this oil for a couple of years now, and I really like the way it works. So there we go. So let's start off with everything. Start off with the diagrams that you have seen with your cars. Some cars, the older cars, came with pamphlets that showed where to oil them. Some of the newer cars still have that pamphlet, like, and this is this book here is Volume 3, the Volume 3 handbook. I've had this since it was new. And it shows you these diagrams in there of where to oil your cars and everything. Most of these diagrams are for the very first use. So breaking your cars in, and it shows you to oil, all the points that you want to oil on your cars. And for the first couple of times when you're breaking in a chassis, you want to follow that. Like on that's the AFX one. It shows, it shows the axles on both sides. It shows the front axle on both sides. The top gear, the idler gear, the back gears, all that stuff. You kind of want to do that until your chassis gets broken in. Once your chassis gets broken in, there's several places that you do not need to oil on a regular basis, and we'll talk about that as we go along. So let's start off with the T-Jet. So this will cover T-Jets and freight cars. So on my cars, where I oil on my cars, especially after I clean, I don't always oil all the time on my cars. After I clean them, I'll oil underneath this gear. I'll oil underneath the idler gear. And then I'll put a little dab underneath this back gear on the top plate. And I'll put some back here on this gear in the back. I only do that right after I clean it. I don't do that all the time. And then, of course, you want to do the little center pin here in between your motor brushes. Now, that's the one where you're going to need to oil the most on a T-Jet car. But do not over oil right there, because that oil will seep into your, if you get oil too much, it'll seep into your motor brushes and then the car won't run right. Now, if you have that issue, something you can do to clean up your motor brushes without having to install new motor brushes is take your soldering iron and a cloth, put your motor brush on the cloth, take your iron, your soldering iron, preferably a trigger one because you can control it more that way. Put the soldering iron on top of the motor brush and pull the trigger and heat that motor brush up. And you'll watch all the oil start to bubble out of your motor brushes. It works really well. I've done it with all of my T-Jets, Magna Traction, non-Magna Traction cars. You can do it with your Auto World X-Traction cars or your Johnny Lightning X-Traction cars. It'll all do the same thing, and it'll help boil out some of that motor brush and some of that oil that has seeped into your motor brushes. And the car will perform a lot better after you do that. So make sure when you oil on the bottom on your T-Jets that you don't over oil them in that spot. Only a little tiny dab will do, and it'll be ready to go. Now on a T-Jet, that's probably where you do your oiling the most, is right there on that little gear, on the little pinhole in between your motor brushes. If you're driving your racing your T-Jet and you start to hear a squeal, that's where it's actually coming from. It's coming from the bottom of your armature that's inside that hole right there. It needs oil. So 9 times out of 10, when you oil your T-Jet, that's where it's going to need to oil the most, is right there on that pin. I don't suggest oiling your axles on a constant basis because it doesn't, once they get broken in and that chassis gets broken in, you don't really need to. You can from time to time, but it could loosen up your rear gear, especially on a freight car where you have a completely smooth axle. If you're running like a tungsten or a titanium axle, if you get a lot of oil right there, that gear will start slipping, and then you'll have to replace your gear. You'll have to take the axle out, clean it, get it all nice and clean, and put it back in, and you're going to have to put in a new gear so it won't slip anymore. So make sure you're being really careful there. Also, if you have slip-on silicone over foam tires, the same thing could happen there. You can start spinning the axle inside of the hub on that car if you oil it too much on the axles. So just when you're using oil on your slot cars, use them sparingly. You don't always have to oil them up here. You don't always have to oil them back here. And just basically on the pinhole right there on your T-Jets. That's where you want to oil them the most. Now that will work with your T-Jet, your freight car, your Johnny Lightning, what do they call the Johnny Lightning one? Your Johnny Lightning cars will be the same way. The Thunderjet cars, I can't remember what they actually call them, and the Auto World cars are the same way. They're all basically the same chassis, so they all have basically the same oiling points. So that covers that right there. So the next two we're going to talk about is your non-mag, your Magna Traction. This will also work for your Auto World X-Traction, X-Traction Ultra G, and your Johnny Lightning X-Traction cars. They're all the same. Basically the same thing applies to these that you apply to your T-Jet. The top gears, I only oil after I clean the car. Of course, your rear axles don't need to be oiled all the time, especially your fronts if they're independent and rolling really well. Don't really worry about it once they're broken in. You don't really need to oil them all that often. Same with the axle, same with your rear gear. So, just like your T-Jet, that bottom pinhole is your key oiling point on a constant basis. If it starts squealing again, that's where you need to oil. And once again, use your oil sparingly down there. You want it to just cover that little shaft of your armature down there just enough to, I mean, I've even seen people take paintbrushes and paintbrush in oil on the bottom of their T-Jet and their Magna Traction and their non-mag cars, just so they do not over oil it. You don't need a whole lot, but you just need a little bit. Same with your Magna Traction car. Same things apply here as they apply there. When you clean it, you want to oil underneath your top gear, your idler gear, your back gear. Don't necessarily need to oil down here, because a lot of the oil that gets up here ends up down there anyway, so you don't really need to worry about that. And then, of course, you've got that bottom pinhole once again to oil. Now, I don't oil my cars on a regular, like when I first take them out to race, I don't even oil them. If you take your car out, put it on the track before you guys start racing, run a couple of laps. If the car doesn't squeal at all, you should be good to go. And do that. Make sure you have your oil handling, because you never know when that car's going to start to squeal. And once it starts squealing, then you're going to need to put oil on that bottom pinhole on the bottom of your chassis, whether it's your T-Jet, your non-mag, your Magna Traction, your Ultra G, X Traction Ultra Gs. That's where you're going to need to oil the most and work it. So those are your pancake motors and where you want to oil them. It's up to you guys whether you want to oil your axles all the time and all that kind of stuff. I just don't. I don't prefer to. And my cars run really, really well. Like I said, I only oil the top plates after I've cleaned them. And after I've got the car all clean and everything, then I'll oil them again and put them in there. And the only spot that I worry about on my pancake motors is that little dot armature down there that needs to be oiled like once or twice a race. It depends on how much you're racing. So let's move on to your original G Plus car. So basically on your G Plus car, outside of this one, you don't have to worry about the fronts very much because they're an independent front end. You don't want to use a lot of oil there because it will break that plastic down on the fronts and start running into issues with your front ends and the pin that holds the wheel in. You'd want to occasionally oil your back axle, not a lot, just a little bit, just to keep it from binding up or anything. The two key points on a G Plus car is this front mount for your motor and the rear mount for the motor. You need to be careful with that rear mount. You don't want to over oil it, or you're going to start spinning your pinion gear, and then you're going to run into issues. So very sparingly in the back, mainly in the front on your G Plus car. So basically you only have 1, 2, 3, 4 spots on a G Plus car where you need to oil it on a regular basis. And basically with ours, we don't run these cars a whole lot, so when I get it out to race, the only spot I oil is that very front mount for your motor. That's the only place I oil them. So, because also there too, you want to be careful that you're not over oiling it to where the oil goes all the way through that mount and reaches the back part where your motor brushes are, because you're running into the same thing there that you ran into on your T-Jets, Magna Traction, or non-mag car. And I don't know, I haven't tried that trick with the soldering iron with these barrel brushes, so it could work, it could not, I'm not really sure. So that's something you might want to experiment with, and if you want to, make sure you're experimenting it with a car that you don't race very often, something that's just maybe a chassis you just bought off of eBay or something. You can try it with that, so you don't ruin your main race car. So that's the key thing. So let's go into our modern day cars, our Tomei Turbos, our Super Gs, Mega G Plus, and any outside manufacturer, whether we're talking Wizard, whether we're talking Viper, or all of that kind of stuff. So these cars are fairly simple. Once again, you don't really need to oil the front axle. The front axle is in there fairly well. As you guys know, they just clip in, clip out. The less oil you have on these cars, the better, because they won't pick up lint as bad and all that kind of stuff. Basically, you want to oil the front part of the armature in the can motor on your SRT turbos and your regular turbos, and then put a little bit back here in the back of your car to get it all nice and oiled, and then You may want to occasionally oil the rear axle and the rear pinion gear, just every so often, not a lot. Just kind of take a look at it. You don't really need to do it all that often. Just make sure you're not over oiling it as usual, because if you oil over that rear axle, it will pick up a lot of lint and a lot of gunk in that rear axle that you're going to have to clean out eventually. So basically on these you have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 if you count the pinion gear places to oil your car. Like once again, the minimalist oil is all you need. You don't need to over soak it. You don't need to use a lot. Once again, your Super G, same thing. That front bell end, your back end of the motor, your pinion gear, and your axle possibly. Same with and when you're dealing with this, the same with your Vipers, same with your new Wizards that are coming out. They're all basically the same design with the bell ends and the back ends of the cars, so they're all going to have the same oiling points as all the other cars. Just like your if you have a Wizard Storm, basically you want to do the rear mount that mounts on the motor in the rear, your front that mounts it in the front, possibly your pinion gear, possibly your axle. The fronts don't really need it, and especially if you're running an independent front end with the nylon push-in bushings, you really don't need to oil the front end at all. So just make sure you're using your oil sparingly, and you'll be good to go. So let's talk about your Mega G and your Mega G Plus. Now your Mega G is a lot like the Wizard Storms. Once again, you've got that front motor mount, you want to oil it. The back motor mount, you want to oil it, but not a lot. And then your pinion gear if you want to, and your rear axle. Basically, the rear axle thing is you want to be really careful with that. Once the chassis get broken in, like I've said before, on all of these cars, you do not really need to oil the back axle as much as you think. Once that chassis is broken in, and once that hardened plastic, once it gets melted in there where your axle is mounted, or the hole that if you're putting the axle through, once that gets hardened in there and it gets hardened, they spin really well, and you don't really need to oil it all that often. You just need to have some oil there, especially if it's a brand new chassis, to break it in, start helping that process out a little bit, and good to go. Once you got these cars up and running, basically it's just the motor mounts that you need to oil on a regular basis to keep the cars in great working condition. On your Mega G Plus, this one is kind of a hard one. You may want to oil right there outside of the can motor. To get to the front of the can motor on this car is really hard because of that circuit board, and if you get oil on that circuit board, you can run into some issues there. So I haven't really done a lot with these cars. I haven't run them all that much. I've oiled, like I've said, I've oiled right there at the back of the can motor. I've oiled the pinion gear. I've oiled the back axle on these, and that's about it. So with the Mega G Plus, there's not a lot of oiling to do on them because of that can motor and the fact that circuit board being where it's at on the car is really hard to get to. The pinhole is there, but you got to be really, really careful, and you don't want to put a lot of oil there because you got that circuit board and it could really screw the car up. So basically just concentrate on the back of the car. A couple of things about oiling and chassis. If you get an X-Traction car or an X-Traction Ultra G, either a Johnny Lightning or an Auto World, and they're brand new, immediately take them, clean the motor plate, because they're using a grease on the top of those cars. And grease, you don't want to use grease on these cars. You want to use an oil. Grease is too thick. You won't get a very good running thing with them. You'll get a lot of friction with grease. So if you get a brand new one, you guys open it, you'll all know that there's that little white grease on top of all the gears and everything on an X-Traction or an Ultra G. Take it, clean it, get all that oil, get all that grease out, and then go back in and do your oiling sequence on your top gears, your idler gear, your back gear, and use a Slotcar oil, and that car should run way better. So I hope this helps you guys out a little bit on where to oil and how to oil. And don't don't overthink it. Don't constantly oil your cars. I don't constantly oil my cars. I'll get them out, we'll race. I won't have any issues with them at all. I'll occasionally, you know, I'll get my car out, I'll run a few laps. If it starts to squeal, if it's a pancake arm, I oil that little pin on the bottom between the two motor brushes. She's good to go. So basically, you're only doing a real full-on oil of your cars after you clean them. So clean them really, really well. I use rubbing alcohol to clean my cars. I used to sonic clean them every now and again as well. I got to get a new sonic cleaner, but that's a good way to go as well, to just kind of move all the stuff out and everything. But on a regular basis, just use some cotton swabs, some rubbing alcohol, clean the cars out really, really well, let them dry out, which takes really, really quick if you use rubbing alcohol. Put them all back together, do the oil thing, and you should be good to go for at least 2-3 months, depending on how often you race your cars. So I hope this helps you guys. I hope it helps out everybody, and I hope you guys have a great week. Keep on racing slot cars. If you guys did some racing this weekend, good luck. I hope you had a good time. I hope you won some races, and most of all, I hope you had fun, because that's what this is all about. Be on the lookout for another video talking about the point series. We open up a week from today. This is Sunday. We open up a week from today at Stan's house on the Bowman track. He had an open practice today, but I've had such a busy weekend, I just wanted to stay home and watch football, be with my family, and not have to do anything. So we're going to be at his house. Be on the lookout for a video here soon. I'm going to be shooting it today. Probably I'll upload it on Wednesday, talking to you guys about the point series, what we're racing. We haven't decided on a points system yet, but I'm going to give you guys what we're racing, the rules for that car, and then I'll tell you where the schedule's at, what we're racing, and how we're racing them, and all that good stuff. So be on the lookout for that video as well. So next weekend we'll have a bi-weekly featured car. Don't forget to check that out. It'll be one of mine probably. If I can get Elijah to do it, I don't think he's got any new ones to do, but we'll kind of look around and see what we come up with. So be on the lookout for that. Also, be on the lookout for a bunch of other videos. We're still working on the 3x5 build. We still have to install the wall around it. We still have to install the timing system on that track. So we still got some work to do there as well. So be on the lookout for that video. I've also got a couple of videos that I want to do explaining a few oddball chassis out there, like the Magna Sonic car and a couple others that I've picked up. So I want to give you guys a little thing on how they work. And just be on the lookout for videos. So I hope you guys have a great week. Keep the wheels on the downside, the pin in the slot. Don't forget to visit slotcarcrazy.com. A lot of great information there, a lot of great websites, a lot of great books that are scanned in there. A lot of great stuff, a lot of great information for you guys to fuel your slot car passions. Go check that out. And don't forget to support everything we do here at Slotcar Crazy, whether it's the YouTube channel, the group page, the website that Jim works on and everything, by going to shop.spreadshirt.com/slotcar-crazy and get your slot car apparel. I promise there'll be some more stuff up there soon, but we have Slotcar Crazy, the Slotcar Crazy logo on shirts, sweatshirts, and hats. We have the closing saying of keep the wheels on the downside, the pin in the slot, and shirts, sweatshirts. And we have them for boys, women, their children, women, and men. So go check that out. It really helps the channel out. And it helps spread the word of Slotcar Crazy out there. So go and check that out. Pick up your apparel there and support the channel. So have a great week. I'm out. I'll see you guys in the next video. I love you guys. Keep racing slot cars, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.